Dear students, welcome to another episode of Editorial Analysis by Drishti IAS. In this segment, we analyze important editorials from major newspapers such as The Hindu, The Indian Express, Live Mint, The Hindustan Times, etc. for effective understanding of students. Through this program, we primarily focus on three things. One, to establish a link between the editorial and the UPSC syllabus. Secondly, to understand the key points of the editorial. And lastly, to discuss the key concepts that are mentioned or which are necessary to understand the editorial. Dear viewer, this video is available in Hindi as well. If you wish to watch it, please visit our Hindi YouTube channel, Drishti IAS. For your convenience, the link for this video in Hindi has been provided in the description below. For today, we have chosen the editorial from the Hindustan Times dated 15th July 2020. The title of the editorial is Europe Can Be a Key Ally for India and How We Shouldn't Underestimate the EU's Potential to Meet India's Geopolitical, Economic and Strategic Ends. Let us begin by linking the editorial with the UPSC syllabus. We can easily narrow it down to General Studies 2, where it talks about international relations. To go further, we can also club it with bilateral, regional and global groupings and agreements involving India and or affecting India's interest. Also, effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest, Indian diaspora, etc. Now, before we try to understand the key points of the editorial, let's have a little background. The editorial focuses on the EU-India Virtual Summit, wherein Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with the leaders of the European Union for the first ever virtual 15th EU Summit on 15th July 2020. Now, both sides had released the EU-India Strategic Partnership, a roadmap to 2025, to guide cooperation between EU and India over the next 5 years. Also, trade and investment agreements, defense cooperation, launch of a new maritime security dialogue, and agreement between Europol and the CBI were some of the agreements that were finalized by both sides. Another important outcome was the resumption of high-level negotiations on the broad-based bilateral trade and investment agreement, which was commenced in 2017. However, it was stalled in 2013 due to differences on access to market and movement of professionals. Now, with this background in mind, let us try to understand the key points of the editorial. The key points of the editorial can be narrowed down to three. One, the importance of the summit, the significance of European Union for India, and how EU and India can help each other. To begin with, the importance of the summit, the first point is the timing. India is dealing with a major military crisis on the border with China, while the EU is also witnessing the rise of China as an aggressive power. Secondly, the rising cases of coronavirus has taken a toll on every country. Technically, every country is preoccupied in trying to control the coronavirus pandemic, despite which EU and India still decided to go ahead with their virtual summit. This signifies the growing relationship between India and EU. Next, we talk about the significance of the European Union for India. Now, if you've observed the recent tension between India and China, India has chosen to respond to Chinese power through economic decoupling. Now, what is economic decoupling? In simple terms, it means China has decided to diversify its economic growth away from China. And how is this achieved? By strengthening partnerships with other countries. And this is where EU can be a crucial partner for India. Now, why? Because the attitude in Europe towards the Chinese has of late not been very favorable. Also, in 2018, the EU had released a new strategy for cooperation in India. It had termed India as the geopolitical pillar in Asia and thereby is crucial for maintaining the balance of power in the region. Next, how can EU and India help each other? According to the editorial, we look at 5 factors. To begin with, technology. India has been reconsidering the 5G technology provided by Huawei, a Chinese company, due to security concerns. And this is where European companies such as Ericsson and Nokia can be considered. Both of these are giants in 5G technology and have already a base in India. Another factor is geopolitical. The Chinese influence in our neighborhood due to Belt and Road Initiative can be countered with the help of the European Union. The EU has devised its connectivity strategy along with the US and Japan and has also been providing aid to the tune of Euro 414 billion globally as an alternative to BRI. Also, the European Investment Bank have invested in domestic infrastructure projects in India. However, India can also seek EU's support in fulfilling the infrastructural needs of our neighboring countries as part of India's neighborhood diplomacy. Third factor is defense, especially maritime security. India can explore ways for cooperation with EU in the Indo-Pacific region. How? By inviting countries of the EU to participate in naval exercises. What could be the benefit of this? This could help in keeping a check on Chinese presence in the Indian Ocean. The fourth, trade. Now, as India has been promoting Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India, we can invite European investments to utilize the opportunity in India and thereby integrate our domestic production with global supply chains. Also, as Europe looks to diversify supply chains and move away from China, India can serve as a fertile ground to attract investments. But this can be done by negotiating free trade agreements with the EU. Lastly, the coronavirus crisis. Now, many countries are seeking accountability from China with reference to the origin and response to the coronavirus. Now, increasing recognition that Chinese influence in international organizations such as WHO can also be countered. If you are aware, India has been recently elected as the chairperson to the executive board, and therefore the EU can be a powerful ally in checking Chinese influence. Now let us try to summarize what we have tried to learn from the editorial. First, the importance of the summit. That is, 1. The timing. India-China tensions, EU-China tensions as well, and also despite domestic tension, that is, the rising coronavirus cases, a lot of countries are busy in trying to control the pandemic. Yet, India and EU decided to go ahead with the summit. Now, what was the significance of the summit? Economic decoupling, wherein India is trying to diversify its economic growth. And how is this done? By strengthening partnerships with other countries. And how can the EU play a crucial role? Because of late, there's been an unfavorable attitude in Europe towards China. Therefore, India can get into this gap. And now, lastly, how can EU and India help each other? Through 5 factors. 1. Technology, geopolitical factors, defense, trade, and control of the pandemic. With this, we can understand the key points of the editorial. Now we move to the most important segment, the key concepts of the editorial. From the editorial, it is very important that we try to learn about the European Union. Now, what is the European Union? It is an international organization formed in 1993. What is it? It is a group of 27 countries in Europe, formerly 28 countries. As we go further, I shall explain the reason for 27 countries now. Now, the EU came into force after the signing of the Maastricht Treaty, also known as the Treaty of European Union, by 28 countries. Now, the Maastricht Treaty was amended thrice. 1. The Treaty of Amsterdam in 1997, Treaty of Nice 2001, and Treaty of Lisbon 2009. A short note, Maastricht is a city that is located in the Netherlands. Now, most countries that are part of the European Union use the same coin or the same currency, which is referred to as the euro. Today, 19 out of 27 European Union countries use the euro. Now, let us try to understand the background of the EU. Now, the idea to make the European Union came after 2 big wars. This is the World War I and World War II, which happened in Europe. Now, countries in Europe felt and thought it is better to work together than fight against each other. Now, in the beginning, only 6 countries in Europe started working together. That is Belgium, Germany, France, Italy, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. They had signed the Treaty of Rome in 1957 and formed the European Economic Community, EEC. Now, today, 27 countries are part of the European Union. Now, as we mentioned earlier, we spoke about 28 countries. Now, how has it gone down to 27? In June 2016, the United Kingdom opted for Article 50 of the Treaty of Lisbon, wherein the Article 50 clause gives the member states the explicit legal right to leave the EU. If you would have noticed, the Brexit movement is related to this movement. From 31st January 2020, the United Kingdom is no longer part of the European Union. Now let us try to learn some key features of the European Union, and the most important one being the Schengen area. Now, the basic purpose of European Union is to grow together instead of fighting, wherein people can help in the development of the region. And for this, the European Union made it easier for people to move freely from one country to another. They can live, study or work in any country of the European Union they want. And for this purpose, the European Union made the Schengen area in 1985. Now, does that mean they have wiped out borders? No. The Schengen area is actually an area without borders. However, in this area, that is, all the countries that are involved in the Schengen area, people can travel from country to country freely and easily. How? Because they do not have to go through checks and controls as they pass from one country to another. Now, does that mean all countries of the European Union are part of the Schengen area? No. Only 22 out of the 27 countries of the European Union are part of the Schengen area. Ireland, Romania, Bulgaria, Croatia, and Cyprus are not part of the Schengen area. Interestingly, also 4 countries that are outside of the European Union are part of the Schengen area. These 4 countries are Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland. Now let us try to learn some of the important bodies of the European Union. Now, most importantly, the European Commission, wherein it suggests laws for the EU. Next, the European Parliament, where the members of the European Parliament are elected by all people in Europe to stand for their rights. And third, the Council of European Union, where decision makers of the countries of EU come together and make the Council of the European Union. Another 2 important bodies are the Court of Justice of the European Union, which makes sure that all laws happen correctly in the European Union, and the Court of Auditors, wherein it checks if the money of the European Union is spent in the right way. Now we focus upon India and EU relations. Now, India and EU relations can be dated back to early 1960s. At the 5th India-EU Summit at The Hague in 2004, the relationship was upgraded to a strategic partnership. The 27-member bloc, or the EU, is India's largest trade and investment partner. However, India's trade is only 2% of EU's total trade. Annual trade in goods and services with the EU is worth $140 billion. What are the issues that India and EU face in their relations? Now, India and EU launched negotiations on the ambitious, broad-based bilateral trade and investment agreement in 2007, but these negotiations stalled in 2013. Why? Because they couldn't agree upon movement of professionals and access to their markets. Also, India-EU trade has grown but remains much below its potential. Why? Because if you look at this point, India's trade is only 2% of EU's total trade. So we can do more and gain more. Also, the recent 15th annual summit, the virtual summit, did not witness many negotiations or talks on FTAs between India and the EU. In spite of which, India and EU share faith in democracy and an open, rule-based order, which makes it easier to explore new areas that can bring both sides together in a more meaningful and productive partnership. Now let us try to understand the editorial from the prelims and mains perspectives and try to learn what kind of questions can come. For prelims perspective, of course, the formation of EU, questions related to Maastricht Treaty, Treaty of Rome, etc. can be asked. Treaties of the EU, for example, Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty. Also, and most importantly, map-based questions can be asked in the prelim segment. Also, questions based on agreements. For example, the digital marketing strategy or the BTIA agreement was asked in the prelims. Also, policy-based questions adopted in EU. Now, from mains perspective, we can try to look at India-EU relations, certain questions that can be asked. and also challenges posed by China on Europe and its effect on India. With this, we conclude today's session of editorial analysis. Hope you enjoyed the session. Until next time, stay safe. Thank you.